Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tom Worth Jr. and today I wanted to talk about some of the, in the comments, my supposedly over-optimistic view of the race with all the tight polls that we see in the media every day and my misplaced whatever. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about that, why that is. And I've described it with the factors day before yesterday, the 5 factors, and then yesterday with the Dobbs decision being the huge factor. But where it's not, I'm not just making this up, and I do look at information like not just polls, but what goes into the polls. These polls are always of likely voters. And what is a likely voter? You may think you know, and you may know, many of you do. I heard a guy talking about it on YouTube this morning, and it sounded oversimplified to me, so I went ahead and looked it up myself. Basically what it is not, it is not someone who's calling and doing a survey and asking you, are you likely to vote in the next election? And you say yes, therefore presto, you're a likely voter. That's not what it is. What it is, well, I looked at Gallup, the Gallup organization, Gallup surveys, been around forever. And what they have is 7 criteria. And each polling organization will have their own criteria and their own definition of what a likely voter is, but it's not, I don't think it deviates too much from legitimate organization to legitimate organization. And the thing is, I think that these polls, by only surveying likely voters, they leave out, sure, among the likely voters you can have the breakout be what it is, but you're leaving out a lot of people who are going to vote. And you're just not including those people. You're saying among likely voters, this is what the result is. And the fallacy that people make is by thinking, well, that's all the people who are likely to vote. And it's not, because the definition of a likely voter is pretty specific. And just looking at what Gallup's definition is, there are 7 questions that they will ask a potential respondent to their survey, and 1 through 7. And for each question that you answer in a certain way, you can get a point for that question, or you cannot get a point for that question. So you need to have either 6 or 7 points out of those 7 questions. So if you're answering one of these 7 questions not in an acceptable way to be counted as an eligible voter, or a likely voter, then you're not going to be included in this survey response. So it's not that hard to disqualify yourself as a likely voter in this case. Question 1, thought given to election. If you respond quite a lot or some. Now, some of these questions will have, your choices will be a simple yes, no. Some of them will be like that. You have a number of responses that they will read you and you have to pick one. Some of them have up to 12 possible answers that you could respond. But you have to answer with certain answers in order to get a point for that question. So thought given to election, you have to either say quite a lot or some. Know where people in the neighborhood go to vote, you have to say yes. Voted in election precinct before, you have to say yes. So I guess if you've recently moved since the last election, you couldn't say yes. How often you vote, you have to either be always or nearly always. So if you haven't voted before, but you are absolutely going to vote this time, sorry, that doesn't make you a likely voter, according to their criteria. Therefore, your responses would not be included in their poll results. Plan to vote in this election, you have to say yes. Likelihood of voting on a 10-point scale, so 1 through 10, you either have to say 7, 8, 9, or 10, or you don't get a point for that question. And finally, this is kind of a big one, I think, voted in last presidential election, you have to say yes. So going back to 2020, if maybe you were scared of COVID or something. That was one of my 5 factors. I don't think that's a large number of people. But say you just were disgusted with your choices. So many people thought Donald Trump is the best Republicans can do. Joe Biden, really? He's the best America has to offer on the Democratic ticket? Like, how could these two guys be these two nearing 80-year-old white dudes who are not what they used to be, or in the case of Trump, is everything he always has been, but just not as sharp anymore? How could they be our two choices? But they were. And a lot of people just said, no thanks, I'm not voting for either one of these guys. And they didn't vote. Well, guess what? Now you don't have a point on this qualification as a likely voter. So now any of those other 6 questions, well, if you don't have the right answer, you're not going to be considered a likely voter. So you won't be included in any of these surveys, any of these polls. That's a big thing. There's going to be a lot of people who are not counted as likely voters because of those criteria. They didn't have a couple of them. So, and those people will absolutely vote here in 2024. And this is why yesterday's video I say the Dobbs decision is so huge. That is going to get people to vote, even though they're not quite, quote, likely voters. They are 150% going out to vote. Another factor is voter turnout. And, if you have 70% voter turnout, that's great. In battleground states where we have like a point difference or a 2-point difference, and again, none of these are solid. They're all well within the margin of error. So it could be a lot different than that. If you get this voter turnout up to like 72%, 74%, 76%, that just completely obliterates any of these 1-point margins in any of these polls. And then the other big thing was, and I hate to touch on this again, this is a sore spot for some people, but the college degree versus no college degree, and there's so many people without college degrees, and so many of them do vote, and a lot of them are going to be voting for Kamala Harris. A lot of them are going to be voting for Donald Trump. I point this out because it's statistically significant enough for polling organizations to break it out as a factor. Like the behavior is it's just a difference in behavior for people that have a college degree and don't have a college degree on a statistical basis. Of course you can go vote, and you will go vote if you don't have a degree. That's fine. But what we do see is, and Trump, the reason it's a big deal is the Democrats overwhelmingly get the college-educated vote, and they have for the past several elections. It used to be a Republican thing that college-educated people really voted more for Republicans, but the last several elections, it's gone the Democrats' way, and it's just a trend, and everyone expects that trend to continue. It certainly was the case in 2016 and 2020. No reason to expect any different from this time around. And especially the white non-college educated voter. They just break in a big way for Trump. But only if they vote. Because we have Pew survey results from the last 3 elections. 2018 midterm, 2020 presidential, 2022 midterm. The last 3 elections, 3 national elections. And among non-college educated voters, with the question of, did you vote in these last 3 elections? One of them, both of them, all 3 of them, none of them? Well, the percentage that voted in none of these most recent 3 elections, national elections, is 36% if you don't have a college degree. Over a third did not vote in any of those 3 elections. only half as many did not vote for college-educated voters. Only 18% voted in none of the last 3 elections. And then, so that's an 18-point difference with white voters, which that's Trump's overwhelming support is white, non-college educated voters, is 31% did not, of the non-college degree, did not vote in any of the last 3 elections, but only 13% of white college grads. That means 87% of white college grads voted in one of the last 3 elections. 56% of them voted in all 3, but only 35% of the white non-college educated voted in all 3. So that's a 21-point spread. So you can come on all you want and say I'm making stuff up and say you don't believe it and blah 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 blah. That's fine. But if you yourself aren't going out to vote, then you're not doing any good. So I would say go vote. You can be angry at me if you're a Trumper, or you can be upset at me that I'm not as worried as you are if you are a Democrat voter. But these are just powerful trends that do not get captured in these polls. And another thing is, I'm sorry, but CNN and MSNBC and Fox News, they all have a vested interest in tight polls, in a tight race that keeps everybody watching every day, tuning in, looking, seeing what the horse race is today, and that's fine. It's entertainment value. That's cool, but it does help them. The tighter this thing is, it does help them. So they're not focusing on the polls that have her quite a bit ahead. They're not focusing on the national race where she's 4 points ahead. I mean, that's huge. Because that doesn't freak people out. It doesn't scare people. We all know scare sells. And that does it on all sides. Fox just takes it to a never before seen level where they're just actually making stuff up. CNN's not making stuff up. MSNBC's not making it up. They are choosing to focus more on the scary stuff, but they're not just flat out lying to you about it like Fox News does. So that's the other thing to keep in mind in all of this. You are most likely focused on whatever media decides to focus you on. And I'm the same way. That's why I try not to watch too much of it. That's why I try to direct my own stuff. It's more YouTube videos that I like their perspective. But I'm always looking stuff up. I'm going to Gallup or Pew. I'm looking things up with journalistic sources. That's just what you need to do, whatever side you're on. Always be educating yourself and always be understanding. I think it's a real eye-opener that what constitutes a likely voter. The guy whose YouTube I watched, I hadn't seen him before, but he said it basically came down to, did you vote in the last election or not? And that makes you a likely voter. It's not that simple, but that's one factor, and each organization will have their own. So anyway, that's about it for today, and hope you all have a good weekend, and we'll talk tomorrow.